welcome back to the Little Western Model Railway YouTube channel. I'm James. Now today we're going to be taking a look at something quite exciting for me, the Network Traveller train set from Hornby. Now several weeks ago I won this from Roxley Models when they hit 1,000 followers on Instagram, and you know, to share their love they did a competition and I was lucky enough to win it. I don't know. And I saw this as a golden opportunity for several reasons. First, I wanted to review a train set. I wanted to get a train set. I haven't had one in 17, 18 years, so I thought, why the heck not? Two, my daughter is really into trains, and she really wants to see my stuff going, and as you know, I haven't got anything going yet. And she's been playing with this, you know, every other day since we got it, so, you know, big success there. But also I wanted to get some sort of test track. So from now on, this will be the beginning of my test track, and I will go into that in more detail in a completely separate video of how I'm going to set that up, and yeah, we'll get into that later on. But I wanted to shout out Roxley Models, say thank you very much for selecting me as the winner. I will leave links to their website and social media in the description below, but enough of me rambling on, let's get into it. So, if we take a look at the box, we can see a very familiar Hornby art style, classic image of the locomotive and wagons as the main motif with the title in the top right. You also have an outline of the included track above a track map, or track MIDI map as they've now called it, in the lower left, a pictorial showing the contents, and a short blurb of history in the lower right. Flipping the box over, we can see a larger picture, which is an actual layout on a track map containing a Eurostar and a Flying Scotsman set, with a few breakdowns of the track packs that are currently available and the accessory packs as well. Maybe I'll invest in these in the future, maybe not, we'll see. Now, if we squiggle on over to the contents, so, moving on to the contents, we can see a pulpable tray. We can start with the standard Hornby DC controller, give it a little bit of a swivel. Very basic, very hands-on for smaller hands. A 19 volt 0.5 amp UK plug power supply. Pretty much standard, perfect for beginners. No need to fuss, just plug in and go. Here we also have 8 third radius curves, so that's code 609, and that's 505 millimeters or 21 inches, 21 inch radius, should I say, in particular. Then we have 2 small sections of straights, one of which is the power clip, and as you can see here, they also come pre-installed with fish plates. Yes, everything is pre-installed with fish plates, which is amazing, especially for small hands. My daughter put these onto the floor, and without me even asking her, she was managing to clip it together. Sometimes not right, but the first one she ever did was perfect. This is the detail bag. For some reason there's a fireman in here. I can understand a driver, but fireman, what else? I'll use it for other things. Now, first we have a 10-foot steel open wagon. Pretty basic in detail, but we'll go into that a little tiny bit more later on. But it's nice. It's quite nice. I do like it. A liquid CO2 tanker, as it says on the box. This one is a little bit iffy. It has a very noticeable seam line. A Western Railway 10-ton box van in a quite bright reddy orangey brownie, and then the last thing in here is a BR Class 06 shunter number 06008 in BR blue. And it's a nice little loco. It's got a tiny bit of weight to it, but it's a nice little loco. Now, the last thing in here we have are underneath the tray itself. So we have a user manual for the locomotive, pretty on point. Basic pocket rocket, you know, some standard tips, very basic. We have the track map or mini map. I'll put an annotation up, but it's not track mat anymore. It is track mat. There's different. There's an owner's manual which gives a very good overview of how to look after your model railway. How to build basic baseboards, things like that. So quite comprehensive for a beginner. There's a Collectors Club sign-up sheet. Something I thought was pretty nifty, a 2022 buyer's guide, purchase list, mini catalogue. But yeah, plenty of cool stuff there to show you, to see if you want to get anything, but yes, now out of date. A small template, again, with the radiuses and different track pieces that they have and other accessories that you can buy from them. Pretty standard stuff. And then the last thing is just the manual for the controller. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get these models onto the Lazy Susan and have a closer look. Now, as you would expect, the detail on the locomotive and the wagons are pretty basic, but for around £100 and a starter set, I think it's pretty acceptable. They all have a older style NEM coupling with, one or two variations. I think this oil tanker is the only one that has a complete D assembly. The others are removable without screws. But there are NEM, there are replacements available. A few third parties do 3D printed ones, so I'm sure you could bring it up to date if you wanted to. The finish is also quite acceptable, considering the cost of all these models. I would say they're railroad range for sure, but that's not an issue. There are one or two aspects where you can see daylight in between them, the box van and the tanker specifically. If you look at the underside of the box van, you can straight through the chassis, but how often are you going to be looking from chassis up? The tanker, on the other hand, you can see the two halves distinctively. But on the plus side, there are no noticeable glue markings or missing bits, so I'm quite happy. So the loco has some varying detail. There are some separately fitted parts. Moving on to the loco now. So a bit closer up, as you can see, and straight away you can see that the finish is actually quite good. The body is in two separate parts. And I'll go over how to remove those in a moment. But we can see that there are one or two separately fitted parts. Now, vacuum pipes have already been fitted on this model, so I'm not sure if the pack is just for spares or whatever. There are these poles here, which I'm assuming are lamp brackets. I don't know much about the Class 06. But the handrails and the horn that is plastic are separately fitted, but the handrails on the cab side are not. They're just painted on. But otherwise the livery is acceptable. Now, moving on to the mechanism itself, it's your standard Hornby pocket rocket chassis. There are 6 clips to remove the body, 2 at the back, 2 behind the driving axle, and 2 at the very front. And when you poke these out, you are given I would say the modern standard pocket rocket chassis. Doesn't look like the old one from a Percy locomotive. I have one of those, and it looks relatively similar. The motor does have a few capacitors on it, and it is a plastic worm gear. But other than that, it works perfectly well. It's not over lubricated at all, so that's a plus side. But it's not bad. It's not bad as it is. So anyway, there's nothing really more of note here. So let's get down onto the floor, get the track set up, and get some running in. So here we are down on the track, and I'll show you a brief overview of how big this is. But it's a decent size, you know, definitely enough for a Christmas tree. I think Radius 2 might have been another good option, but it's a decent size track. But I'll do an overview and a running shot in a few moments. So this locomotive is already run in, but I wanted to try and show you that it doesn't really have a great crawl. It's very coggy. And I have just been over this with a bit of ply. Let's bring it back into shot. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe more running will give it some thought, but maybe not. But it does have a decent speed. Let me put it on to 50%. And let's bring it back. So it does have a decent speed. Let's run it round. So that's 50% speed. And we'll whack it up to about 75. And pocket rocket 100. So actually the change from 75 to 100 doesn't seem that much, and I'm using the provided 19 volt supply, 0.5 amps. So let's bring this back to a stop. There you go. So what I'll do is I will get the wagons, load them up, and then get this running for a little bit of time. And while it's running, I'll give you a little bit of history on the Class 06, and then we can move on to final thoughts of the set itself. The British Rail Class 06 is an 040 diesel mechanical shunter built by Andrew Barclay and Sons from 1958 to 1960 for use on the Scottish region of British Railways. Originally numbered D2410 through D2444, the 10 still in service in January 1973 were given TOPS numbers of 06001 through 06010. While all technically similar, the locomotives had two different designs for the back of the cab. The first 15 locomotives had 3 windows, and the remaining 20 had 2. While all were withdrawn and scrapped, there are 2 of the locomotives that are accounted and unaccounted for. The first being 2420 or 06003 of Eastfield Depot, which was where it spent a considerable amount of time before being saved from scrap and taken to the Heritage Shunters Trust collection at Peak Rail in Rowsley. One locomotive, D2432, was sold to P. Wood Shipbreakers of Queensborough, Kent, in 1969, but then it was exported to Italy in 1977, where its whereabouts and fate are subsequently unknown. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of video. I hope to create this kind of style moving forward. You know, these first reviews, second reviews, you know, things like that. I'm going to call them first impressions videos. I don't think you can give a review of something after having just taken it out of the box. You need to give it some time to be able to see how it works, how it plays out. You know, you have no idea what's going to happen the day after you film something. So I'm going to call them first impressions videos, and I want to do more, whether it's locomotives, rolling stock, train sets, bits of tech, you know, whatever it is. I'm hoping to bring more to you guys to be able to share my opinion, as I've said previously. So please, if you like the video, leave a like, leave any comments down below. I'll try to read every single one of them and respond to as many as possible. And if you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button as well. It would really mean a lot to me, really motivating for me. And the last thing I want to do is tell you this week's shout out is for Proper Chuffed. I've had some fantastic conversations with him over the last few weeks. I've really been enjoying his videos and his content and his journey back into model railways or model railroading, depending on where you are in the world. I need to get used to this. But yeah, go and give him some love. A link to his channel is down below. But other than that, I want to thank you all again for watching this video. That's all for now. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Bye.